It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I regret technical issues prevented me from participating with the panelists, but I'm pleased to speak to you on this, what I view as very important topic. I know you have had presentations with respect to the ability of architects to provide leadership to their own projects, and I strongly support that. I have been a fan of the ability of architects to develop their own projects ever since I started teaching in the School of Architecture, which was decades ago. I continue to believe that the men and women who are architects are ideally suited for high quality and also profitable real estate projects. In fact, I think you are best positioned to do it compared to people starting anywhere else. So again, I'm very pleased to participate in this to help those of you who are interested in this avenue of activity to get the information that you need. What I want to do is focus on the macroeconomic environment in my remarks to you. It's a really simple argument I need to make. Even if you were not an architect who wanted to provide the development in leadership, you need to recognize that you design the single most expensive things that can be designed, which are large structures. And except for rocket ships to the moon or something that crazy, this is the most expensive type of endeavor. And for that reason, you need to absolutely understand the financial dynamic that underlies these projects. It's indispensable from my point of view. All commercial real estate almost all commercial real estate is based on financing terms. Almost all large projects carry perpetual mortgages that are never paid off. It's important for architect developers to understand that. I don't want to talk about the technical details of how business leverage increases the rate of return, but when done properly, the borrower is happy never to be paid back. The lender is happy never to pay that loan back. And together, a high quality project that's financially successful is created. There's a lot of resources about the details of that. And of course, you can use professional advisors to guide you through the details of financing. But that being the point, the actual rate of return of a project, because it's built with borrowed money, is they're strongly affected by the interest rate. And the interest rate is the domain of the macroeconomists. So we're on my turf now. So in that sense, because the rate of interest is profoundly going to determine your success. Yes, you need powerful design. Yes, you need to understand what the marketplace wants. Yes, you need to create environments that are productive for workers, that are pleasures to be in if this is entertainment, and efficient and stimulating places to be if we're talking about retail. So taking all the array of commercial building uses, you need to, you need to use all those powers to create success. But if the interest rates turn against you, if you've made a mistake with respect to interest rates, all that enormous work, all that potential value you've created may not be realized. And so what makes me twitch is the wasting of human talent. And so of all the other reasons that motivate me to speak to you this afternoon, it is to actually maximize the talent that's in the School of Architecture, because I actually know about how much creative talent is there. I don't need to be persuaded. What I am fearful is that it frequently is wasted. Is not used to its highest purpose, either by idiot clients, and then you don't advocate properly, or you also undervalue what you do, which drives me nuts. So let's talk about the interest rates and how the macroeconomic environment shapes it. These are also exceptional times with macroeconomic policy in the forefront of public policy of all the major countries on the planet. So, there's a lot of political diversity and disunity on our planet, as you know perfectly well. But oddly enough, one of the things that it most unites the governments of the world, and I mean governments meaning from everything from India to the United Kingdom to the European Union to Russia, to the People's Republic of China, to Australia, New Zealand, and a whole whack of other countries, and also India as well. All those countries have effectively the same forward-facing macroeconomic policy. It varies sometimes, it varies by degree, but this basic orientation is the same, which is to say, we have a health emergency, and therefore we're going to keep interest rates relatively low. So let's quickly get rid of some of the sort of under rubbish that floats through the social media, where you can find more information more efficiently than you have ever in the history of the human race. So please abandon any fantasy from the conspiracy theorists that the governments are going broke. No, they're not going broke. They're going to run out of money. No, they're not going to run out of money. That's the same thing as saying they're going to run out of numbers. Really, let us just move past all of that stuff. No, the world isn't coming in tomorrow afternoon. No, there's an evil conspiracy of bankers to enslave humanity for the next 100 years. No, the coronavirus is not some secret conspiracy of Bill Gates to rule the world. Like, really, you must keep this clutter out of your mind, because the moments are dramatic. We have a public health emergency, which is a dramatic human event. You will tell your grandchildren about this pandemic, like other people in World War II, old people in World War II tell their grandchildren about their experiences during the war. This will give you war stories. I don't know that I like that you have war stories, but it will give you them nevertheless. So these are dramatic times, and the governments of the industrial world, and strictly speaking, they're central bankers who, in organized countries, are separate from their governments. They are not private institutions in any meaningful sense, but central bankers are given political independence so that they're not ruled by politicians. That, of course, is not true in China, nor in Russia, because their governments will not cede power to any responsibility to anyone else but themselves. Canada's Bank of Canada the Bank of Canada here is independent, and the Federal Reserve, thank God, is independent of the President of the United States, since God only knows what that crazy person would be doing if he actually had that power. So there's never a better illustration of the need to separate central banking from the political machinery. Now, that all being said, let's get rid of the clutter, let's get rid of all that other goofy stuff, and recognize that in a public emergency, the governments are determined to keep the economy afloat as much as they can, and they're doing that by borrowing massive amounts of money, and they're borrowing it largely from their central banks, who are just making sure that the checks will flow. This is unsustainable for long periods of time, but it is to deal with an emergency, as there was an emergency in 08, 09, as there was an emergency in 81, 82. There are emergencies, and this is the normal emergency response, which is straight out of any economic textbook. So nothing like odd is going on. This is not some circumstance where, everything, and people are experiencing. No, they're just reverting to old strategies which have been around, my goodness, since World War II, and some of them earlier than World War II. So from that point of view, an established techniques are being done. It's an emergency response, not a long-term response. Are we undergoing some pain? Yes, we are. There are millions of people who are unemployed. They're in distress. And getting a small check to keep them up, let them pay their rent, is not making their distress go away. So a lot of people are hurting. Some businesses are being damaged, and they will never open again. There's probably one favorite restaurant you have that you will never eat in again, because it will go bankrupt in this terrible delay of dealing with the pandemic consequences. So I'm not saying there is no damage. I'm not saying nobody's being hurt. They are. This is a recession underway. The total number of people working is falling, and total output is falling. So this is an economic, this is stringent economic times. Now remember, since I've been teaching in 1980, I began teaching in 1981, and in that period of time, I've taught through 4 recessions. This is the 5th recession I've taught through. I ask you to notice that in that ridiculously extraordinary length of time, which I can barely believe, the economies expanded more than 95% of the time. The default setting for the Canadian, US, European economies, China, India, and the major economies in the industrial world is to grow. Most of the years they grow. So we're in exceptional times. We're not the edge of a depression of sustained contraction forever, and your futures are not gone. But right now, like many people, your careers are under some stress. Now, if of course we're talking about property development, now the macroeconomic environment is actually being kind to you, because one thing that is going on is interest rates are being driven down to very, very, very low levels. Depending on how you measure interest rates, and generally speaking, if you're a developer, you like a low interest rate because it maximizes your ability to do leverage. Interest rates are at depends, they can be defined a number of different ways, but substantially they are at 400-year lows. Now 400 years, that is quite a historic measure. Remember, 400 years ago, the industrial world does not exist. We don't have, 400 years ago, that is a long time. We're practically on the edge of the Middle Ages. And technology, we have bare technology. We're nearly 99% agrarian society. And to say they're that low is really quite remarkable. And because of the economic distress, and because they're under the control of central bankers, they are going to stay low for the immediate, indefinite future. Now, you may have heard that when governments or central banks create a lot of money, it causes inflation. Well, of course, there's been practically, consumer inflation, retail inflation is very low. Didn't go out of control in 0809 when the same policy was implemented, and doesn't look to be going out of control now. Of course, what we are getting is, of course, asset inflation, because all that money goes somewhere. That's why the stock markets have been rising sharply. That's why house prices are rising again. Two of my family members have sold houses in the past 2 weeks. They sold them after they were listed for 2 days. They sold them at their asking price, and one sold at a slight premium to asking price. Now, that's just to give you a small strength of the marketplace. That is because people who want to buy houses notice mortgage rates. Notice that mortgage rates, you can get a mortgage for in the 2% range. In a few places you can get, depends on what kind of mortgage, you can get slightly under 2%. Normal mortgage rates should be running around 6%. So that is like sharply lower than they were. And they're likely to stay that way. So there is that basic tone in the marketplace, which is holding property values and stock values up. And those low interest rates, of course, are favorable to you. Now, of course, the other element of these odd circumstances. So you have low interest rates likely to stay low relatively for at least the medium term, which means that helps you do planning if you're a developer. The other interesting element are there opportunities available to acquire your base material, which is, of course, land. Now, the market's fairly strong, so where is space available? Because that's the side. If the raw material that drives development, which is the interest rates, is relatively low and likely to stay low for a while, then that is not only not a problem, it's like a green light flashing. Opportunity for those who want to be developers. Now, the next question is, okay, what project and where will I get a piece of land to build on? Will not necessarily be buying the land. You might be developing it in partnership with someone, but it still doesn't change the fact that you would be looking for bargains. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to be candid with you. In times of distress, there will be bargains. There will be property that will be available at a bargain price because it is part of a failed activity, and the owners want to bail. And so you would pay attention to those opportunities, which may be within the next year or so. If you are thinking, this is not a recommendation, warning, advertisement, announcement, I take no responsibility for financial well-being. But I am trying to give you an example. Right? It's important. Here's an example of what some people are going to consider doing. And that is, as you know perfectly well, the tourist industry is practically collapsed. Flying, hotels are way below occupancy. I happen right now, I'm in a rural county north of Ottawa, so in my country home, near my farm family, which is like a big deal from my point of view. And in this area, there's a strong tourist area because it's beautiful rural Ontario, north of Ottawa, rivers and lakes everywhere. Campsites are half occupied. Marinas have half filled. Traffic is light, so all of this is July, it should be the height of the tourist season. The weather's warm, so it's favorable for frolicking in the lakes. Very, handsome lifestyle. Algonquin Park should be crawling with people. Now, there are people who are starting to stir again. Now they're ready to leave their homes, and so you can see a pickup of activity. But some of the tourist operations are struggling badly. Remember, some restaurants are also tourist-oriented. So you're both a restaurant in a non-tourist area struggle. So if you're a restaurant in a tourist area, the struggle will be very great. One of the restaurants that I would go past as I come home hasn't opened this summer because just not enough traffic. So you see, there will be some people who are wondering whether there will be some marinas, resort areas that their owners are now just want to leave. They're forced to leave or now have just decided the whole thing is just, they don't want to wait out the pandemic. Maybe they're older and want to retire. Now there's just a small example of how you might find an opportunity to do a development. I just note this. I've been in some projects, resort, recreational projects, designed by, developed by non-architects. It doesn't mean they're terrible, but it does mean they do not maximize the value of their site. Remember, when people go to a tourist area, they're going for an experience. You guys, you're supposed to be experts in creating human experiences out of in a built structure. And you're supposed to be experts in how the built structure relates to the environment surrounding it. So you should be masters of creating a structure that is stimulating and is integrated into a beautiful view, a scenic area, an area of rich wildlife, whatever the purpose would be. Now, I'm just giving you a small example of how looking for opportunities in today's circumstance, someone who has a killer business, if they knew how to run it properly, if they had a vision of what the physical thing could look like as a unit, and that should be your forte, for example. Now that's only one of like dozens of different examples of the former students I've had who have done successful development. They have often found recessions to be opportunities that gave them some start. Now, it's not their whole strategy, but an opportunity was available from someone who lacked imagination. Now, sometimes it was with the partner of the property who said, I'm going to go broke if I don't do something different. And the architect developer says, as a partner, let me show you what you could create. Instead of having a building here that looks like a, motel you can see any place on the planet with like a little box of a building, I'll show you how to triple your business. I happen, for example, to be Newfoundland. Here's another example. In Newfoundland, my friend and I are starving to death. We're in this pristine wilderness. There is one of these junk building, a rectangle. I could design the thing. Don't even need any designer. It's a rectangle. Like, we know how to build rectangles. Tell the carpenter, okay, I want to build a rectangle building of this dimensions. A carpenter knows how to put it together. And a good carpenter would do it roughly meeting the building code. And so we stopped at this place that was not exactly inviting and thought, okay, we're starving to death, so we're going to go in there. We went into it. And in the back, even though it was not visible from the road, and even though it was not advertised, and even though the building didn't take advantage of it, was a spectacular view over an inlet where you could actually watch whales and icebergs float along. Now, why would anybody put such a stupid building on such a commanding site, giving nobody any reason to come unless you'd already accidentally found it? Now, do you see why I do not see a shortage of opportunity for you in these and in other circumstances? So you have a macroeconomic advantage because interest rates low. You have a macroeconomic advantage because there may be some development opportunities where their current owners are in distress and have no imagination about how to fix things. Now, last time I looked, you guys are supposed to have imagination. This is where you should all nod at me. Yes. Don't not nod at me and set me off. I can see a few faces. Well, yeah, I mean, this part of the claim stuff. I mean, for goodness sakes, when your school advertises for students, they do not ask the least imaginative high school students to please choose the School of Architecture at the University of Waterloo. Whatever else we do not say that. And that is why there is a stringent application process I will send a lot of students away because they cannot demonstrate that they have that creative spark we look for. And that is in fact the point. How that creative spark can, but you have to bring it. You can't wait for this idiot restaurant owner in the box to say, well, you know, I guess I need to maximize the value of where I'm sitting. You need to see that, say it, advocate for it, and then, you know, put your skin in the game rather than just getting a commission from someone. And then you share the reward and the risk. Let there be no doubt. I'd like to comment quickly on two other macroeconomic trends which are totally in your favor. And while I've made this argument to invite architecture students to consider providing this development leadership, the circumstances, the macro circumstances have gotten better over the decades that I've been teaching. They've been getting better in two particular ways. One pandemic related, but looks to be systemic, and one that was a more slow development. And that is that you live in a society in North America and much of Europe and in much of urban India and urban China. And that's basically the bulk of the population of the planet when you include Europe, North America, India, and China. You don't actually have all that many people in the world left. Now, that thing that's happening in these mature states is that is the decline in the number, in some cases, and proportion in all cases, of factory jobs. Factory jobs are in long-term systemic decline. They are everywhere, including in China, by the way. China is an efficient manufacturer, not because they have cheap labor. That was 2 years ago. You know, long time. That's an old story. China and the rest of the world is automating very quickly. You are replacing people with machines. If China didn't do that, it would no longer have efficient production and would lose its export markets. Now, if that's true for China, then it's true for everyone because their wage rates are still somewhat lower than those in North America and Europe. So really, do you see why this is a good thing? We don't need architects for factories. Sorry, we don't. That's the domain of the engineer. Factory has to be a certain shape and size, and the nature of the work creates the dynamic of the factory. And so maybe they will let you design the cafeteria. Like whoop-de-doo. Are you not excited that you're designing a factory for mega corporations, gigantic, you know, smartphone factory? No. Workers are becoming knowledge workers, and they're shifting into the service sector. This means more and more the environment of the worker is important for that worker's productivity. And that's where you should shine. You see why it seems to me this is the age of architecture-led development, because you are supposed to know how to build something and make the person in that space happy, content, feel secure, feel serene, be inspired, have an emotional connection to the building, right? Like, don't look at me like your professors say, no emotional attachment between the user of the building and the building. I know what they tell you. And largely speaking, most of the time, not all the time, most of the time I approve of what they're telling you. That is the point. But understand that when you have this growth, in fact, in office workers, knowledge workers, there's really two categories of non-factory workers. There are, of course, service workers working in, for example, the hotel industry. It is going to come back, by the way. In the hotel industry, for example, you need high levels of service. Now, how are you going to get that from employees who view the building as making them sick? You want a hotel worker to enter the building happy and proud that they are serving guests. You want the guests in the building thinking, yo, this is an amazing place to be. You get a harmony of interest there. And that you can create. And that kind of employment is becoming more and more important. And then, of course, there are the knowledge workers. There are those people who are, you know, IT sector being paid large salaries, highly specialized skills. The worker, the company needs them absolutely, absolutely to be highly productive. Is that not your domain? And last, and most certainly not least, is the new pandemic accelerated development of working from home. And we may have reached peak city. So for more than 100 years, proportion of population in larger urban areas has been growing and growing and growing. Most economic activity in large cities. The cities pulling people ever tighter to the core, creating ever greater density. And density breeds pandemic. And now many companies are saying work from home, which means from the development industry, doing your project in downtown Barrie rather than King and Bay in Toronto, in Trenton, as opposed to Montreal, in smaller communities, and your palette for enterprise has dramatically expanded, has it not? These systemic social and economic trends are all in your favor. Your skills, talent, and orientation are uniquely suited to harvesting them. I urge you to rise to this challenge. Have a great deal of fun. Serve society. It's exciting when you have skin in the game too, because you might go broke yourself, which will be very annoying. No, well, it hits all notes, exciting, fulfilling, gives you social impact, really, and the times aligned to support you. I, of course, will never wish a group of young men and women luck in their careers. I wish you success in your career, however you choose to evolve it, and particular success should you start yourself creating the built environment as you see the need. Wish you every success in doing so. We certainly need you to do it.